country. That was the previous administration.
No.
Not this
What
one.
are you doing to stop the flow of weapons into Mexico?
We are arresting flow of weapons into, our borders are closed. We are arresting illegal
really?
cartels. Sinaloa from Mexico, MS-13 from El Salvador, TDA. We are arresting from Venezuela. ATF has seized over 14,600 guns since Donald Trump has been president. That's a 33% increase from the last administration. And think about that. That's with our borders secure.
Were they coming into
so they weren't doing anything.
Were they coming into the United States?
Our borders are closed. They're not coming in or out of the United States now across Mexico. We've done a 33% increase in firearm seizures. Think about that. Think about that, Senator, from the last administration. 33% increase. And our borders are closed. So we're getting all these guns off the streets that came into our country. And I'm so proud of the work of the men and women in law enforcement.
I don't think you've done anything to severely interrupt the arming of Mexican gangs, because that's really not what your focus, and I think your focus should be on that. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And can I just add one thing? And
no,
because the borders are closed, we are stopping the guns from going to Mexico.
Well, let me ask you another question. If the borders are closed, why do we have a division headquarters of the United States Army in Fort Huachuca and military elements across the board when the borders close and Border Patrol can handle it?
As former military, I would think you would know the answer to that, to keep Americans safe.
No, I think it's to promote the president's policies on the border, and the readiness of our forces is suffering as a result. Thank you.
Senator Britt.
How are you?
Wonderful, thank you.
Let's actually continue on that line of questioning. I'd like to give you an opportunity to kind of answer anything that you would like, but I want to thank you for what you have done to actually close our border. When we're looking across our nation, we know that fentanyl is a leading cause of death between the ages of 18 and 45. This administration under President Trump and your leadership has said, hey, we are going to shut down the border. We're going to put the safety and security of Americans first. You have made significant strides to go after gang members, cartel members here in our interior. You have worked diligently to remove impediments to being able to prosecute those individuals. We had them in front of judiciary yesterday, a group of experts in law enforcement across the board telling us that we have thousands of cartel and gang members here in our interior. So thank you for your commitment to eliminating that threat. Talk to me about what is in this budget that will allow you to continue the work that you're doing and remove these cartel and gang members from our cities, our streets, and our communities.
Thank you, Senator. This budget requests $10 billion to bolster drug enforcement efforts and $3.2 billion for programs to combat transnational organized crime against America. And transnational crime, that's these gangs that have infiltrated, through Biden's open border policies, have infiltrated our country. Sinaloa, they want to talk about Mexico, MS-13, TDA, Venezuela. They opened their prisons in Venezuela and let these people come to our country no longer. They are so well organized. They have formed huge organizations within our country, and our DEA, our ATF, our FBI, working hand in hand, are doing everything, and with state and local authorities, are doing everything we can to stop that throughout our country. And that's why I would ask everyone to support the big, beautiful bill, because that helps our budget as well for national security.
Absolutely. And General Bondi, I want to thank you and your team. I know that ATF has seized more than 2,000 firearms going to Mexico. So despite the conversation we just heard, you have placed a seriousness on securing our border both ways and making sure that American citizens are safe. So thank you for the work that you are doing and all law enforcement officers that report to you. Fraud is preventing us from actually hearing these cases. So talk to me about what you're doing there and what we can do to make sure that we remove that backlog and any duplicity that we see in the system.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Senator. As of May 2025, there were 3.8 million pending cases and that was a decrease of more than 235,000 cases, adds $1.25 billion for
soil, and particularly in college campuses. And so when we're making sure that anti-Semitism, terrorism, and civil rights violations are adjudicated and given the proper weight of the Department of Justice, I could not be more grateful. Can you talk to us a little bit about the work that task force has done, what you're seeing, and any priorities that you are pursuing to ensure that we eliminate anti-Semitism here in the United States?
Yes, thank you, Senator. It's staffed with dedicated prosecutors, agents, analysts, and linguists. And we are working hand in hand to support all of the efforts. You know, if you're a Jewish college student now, you should be able to freely wear your star around your necklace and around your neck on a necklace and walk into college campuses.
Absolutely.
I had a young man tell me he had to take it off at a university because he was scared to death. And I was glad he took it off for his safety. You shouldn't have to do that. You should be proud of your religion, and you should be safe to practice your religion in this country. And we will continue to do everything through the October 7th task force to protect everyone in this country.
Well, thank you so much, General Bondi, for your commitment to law and order, and appreciate all you're doing to keep Americans safe.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome. It's good to see you here. I want to thank you, General Bondi, and your staff, and all the men and women that work for you that keep us safe. I'd like to echo Senator Moran's comments from earlier. I am always open to conversations about where federal agencies can find savings and efficiencies, and I believe that is critically important for government accountability. However, I received outreach from local law enforcement in Nebraska about the possible transfer of high-intensity drug trafficking areas program to the Justice Department. They fear this recommendation from the Office of Management and Budget could hinder the program's ability to fight drug trafficking. I appreciated your comments before the House Appropriators earlier this week, confirming that HIDA will remain where it is in the Executive Office of the President. We've heard your offers today to many on this committee. I appreciate those offers to work together to make sure that we're going to find effective and needed grants and keep those open, and I thank you for that. I continue to be concerned about the threat of the Chinese government. General Bondi, the threats that they pose to our critical infrastructure here in the United States, and that's whether we're looking at vulnerabilities in our communications network or with agriculture. The CCP is trying to exploit our information and our innovation every time. I want to recognize good work of the FBI field office in Omaha. They have been working proactively to address these state-sponsored foreign cyber threats, and especially where Nebraska's agricultural operations are concerned. How does the Justice Department's budget request support the essential work of FBI field offices so that they can address the rising threats both locally and regionally?
We have numerous threats as you well know, from China, and you discussed. And it's not, we often talk about the physical threats to our citizens, but as you pointed out, the cyber threats are so very real in our country. There's not a day that goes by that we don't discuss that. There are many meetings about that. We have some very frightening actors in our country right now, and we are making many cases regarding those. I know a particular interest in Nebraska is the agro-terrorism as well to you, and that's a high priority for our Justice Department. And this happened, I believe this one was in Michigan, but it was Chinese bringing pathogens into our country. And that was a case that I'm very proud of, that our National Security Division and our FBI made very recently, though. That was in Michigan, but we're working on, by a Chinese national.
Exactly.
And, but we're working on many in Nebraska because of your farmlands, because of the demographics of your beautiful state. And I need to correct, though, I want to correct, though, that one thing that you said with the HIDA grants. I'm a career prosecutor, and those high-intensity drug grants are very important, but $196 million of that will go to the Office of Justice Programs, and we will be sure that they are administered and law enforcement receives the money that they need to continue with that.
Our law enforcement in Nebraska uses those grants, again, in a really responsible way, and they're very, very effective across the state. I'm glad you brought up about the Michigan work that you've done there with regards to ag. Sometimes this country, because we're very, very fortunate to have food security. But when we look at that and the effect it would have on national security, if some of these adversaries that we have would interfere with that, it would be devastating, not just to my state, but to our country as well. I wanted to bring to your attention something else. We've seen evidence of rising cases of cargo theft since 2020. Estimates on the financial impacts of cargo theft are upwards of $35 billion annually. A major concern of mine, beyond the immediate harm that we see there to the multimodal supply chain, is the cartel activity that's involved in this. Transnational cartels, they're increasing to turn over that cargo theft to help fund all their criminal activities, and it's a huge increase. I applaud the administration's ongoing efforts to crack down on violent crime from cartels. I hope you would look at of the FBI field office in Omaha. They have been working proactively to address these state-sponsored foreign cyber threats, and especially where Nebraska's agricultural operations are concerned. How does the Justice Department's budget request support the essential work of FBI field offices so that they can address the rising threats both locally and regionally?
We have numerous threats, as you well know, from China, and you discussed. And it's not, we often talk about the physical threats to our citizens, but as you pointed out, the cyber threats are so very real in our country. There's not a day that goes by that we don't discuss that. There are many meetings about that. We have some very frightening actors in our country right now, and we are making many cases regarding those. I know a particular interest in Nebraska is the agro-terrorism as well to you, and that's a high priority for our Justice Department. And this happened, I believe this one was in Michigan, but it was Chinese bringing pathogens into our country. And that was a case that I'm very proud of, that our National Security Division and our FBI made very recently, though. That was in Michigan, but we're working on, by a Chinese national.
Exactly.
And, but we're working on many in Nebraska because of your farmlands, because of the
Well, I
demographics of
appreciate
your
that.
beautiful state. And I need to correct, though, I want to correct, though, that one thing that you said with the HIDA grants. I'm a career prosecutor, and those high-intensity drug grants are very important, but $196 million of that will go to the Office of Justice Programs, and we will be sure that they are administered and law enforcement receives the money that they need to continue with that.
Our law enforcement in Nebraska uses those grants, again, in a really responsible way, and they're very, very effective across the state. I'm glad you brought up about the Michigan work that you've done there with regards to ag. Sometimes this country, because we're very, very fortunate to have food security. But when we look at that and the effect it would have on national security, if some of these adversaries that we have would interfere with that, it would be devastating, not just to my state, but to our country as well. I wanted to bring to your attention something else. We've seen evidence of rising cases of cargo theft since 2020. Estimates on the financial impacts of cargo theft are upwards of $35 billion annually. A major concern of mine, beyond the immediate harm that we see there to the multimodal supply chain, is the cartel activity that's involved in this. Transnational cartels, they're increasing to turn over that cargo theft to help fund all their criminal activities, and it's a huge increase. I applaud the administration's ongoing efforts to crack down on violent crime from cartels. I hope you would look into this new activity. How do you think the department could optimize resources for federal law enforcement and prosecutors to investigate and disrupt these very, very sophisticated criminal groups like the cartels that are behind these thefts?
On my first day, we called for total elimination of cartels and TCOs, and I believe what you're talking about in your state is through, I would imagine, I-80, Interstate I-80.
Trucking, and also rail.
And the rails, but also in our states that are ports. So
Yes.
Sometimes we feel like cargo only is a port area, but it's not, because it's transported across our country. And we are on high alert and working very diligently to prevent all of that and to take out these cartels who have come into our country, and that's a very, very real threat to Americans and to your state, Senator.
Thank you again, and thank you for the good work you and your team do every single day.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Merkley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, Attorney General. And I'm sorry I wasn't here for the whole hearing, so it's been addressed, but I think you really are very sensitive to the possibility of foreign agents or foreign influence on our government, and making sure that we make sure that doesn't happen.
Yes.
Yes. I want to know if, when the president held his dinner for 220 individuals who purchased the most of his meme coins, were there foreign interests attending that dinner?
Senator, we're here to talk about the Department of Justice and my budget for the upcoming year. I would think that you would want to talk about the leader of the Sinaloa cartel, who was living in Oregon, one of the top leaders. I would think that that's what you would want to talk about with me. When we captured him, he had $3 million cash in his home.
Attorney General, I know that you avoided the same question on the House side, but what we know is that many folks who attended this dinner were buying those coins because they wanted to influence U.S. policy. We had Mr. Javier Selgas, the head of Freight Technology, Inc., who said, I bought $2 million of these coins. I plan to buy $20 million because I want a favor from the president to change the policy regarding freight from Mexico to the United States. This solicitation of investments in his personal product, his meme coin, led to many people who were coming from foreign countries attending that dinner. Don't you think the American people have a right to know? And you said yourself you're very concerned about foreign influence on our government.
Senator, it is wildly offensive that you would accuse President Trump of not protecting American interest in our country when he is the president that has shut down our borders, unlike Joe Biden. President Trump has done everything
instead
to
of
make
changing
America
the
safe,
topic,
and
you
you
can
asked me
actually
the
answer the
question,
question.
and keep America safe.
Do you
and
know
you're trying to
if-
play a gotcha question at a budget hearing when you have murders left and right in your state, violent crimes, and we are doing everything we can to help your liberal state, whether you're liberal or not. We're going to do everything we can to help the citizens of your state, and you're trying to avoid that because you're trying to play a gotcha question with the President of the United States, and it's not going to work. We're here to talk about our
Mr.
budget
Chairman.
for public safety.
I do believe that as the leader of the Department of Justice, you should be concerned about foreign influence. There was obviously a lot of foreign influence and individuals who said they were there for that reason. And so will you appoint a special investigator to make sure that that foreign influence does not affect the policies of the United States of America?
I'm not going to tell you what I will or will not do, other than I will do everything to keep the people of your state safe, even though you don't want to talk about anything to do with your state because of the crime in your state. You also voted no on the Laken-Riley Act. We are doing everything we can to protect the citizens of this country. You also said that President Trump encouraged protest. It was the opposite. He's done everything he can to keep us safe, and he will continue to, as well as the Department of
It speaks
Justice.
volumes that you won't answer the question about transparency when the president is asking people to invest in his company and his products, and that foreigners are attending these events. I think transparency would be appropriate. Are you going to recommend any ethics guidelines to make sure that foreign influence does not find its way in through the doors of the White House?
How do you characterize foreigners, the illegal aliens that have flowed into our country? Is that who you're talking about? You don't want to talk about them. You don't want to talk about the crime that has gone rampant throughout this country and your state.
Well, you know, these hearings are a chance for us to ask questions, and I assure you I'm engaged in national security in many, many ways. But this also I am concerned about, and let me turn to a different piece of the puzzle, because the president also has another cryptocurrency called USD1. It is a stable coin. There was a request by UAE to produce AI chips that would go to UAE. The National Security Advisor of UAE is also the CEO of MGX. So after that request for those chips occurred, MGX then said, we will buy 2 billion, billion with a B, of the president's coins. And then the president went to the Middle East and said, we will get you those AI chips. Does this sequence of events in which a foreign government asked for a big favor, and we had previously banned these chips to UAE because of the national security concerns. Then they buy $2 billion of the president's coins, and then the president goes to the Middle East and says, we will provide those chips. Does that sequence of events concern you about foreign influence on the United States of America?
The foreign influence on America that I would be concerned about if I were you was the Mexican national that resided in Oregon, who we just arrested, who had 384 pounds of methamphetamine. The foreign individual who I would be concerned about if I were a senator from Oregon is the Honduran drug trafficker who was residing in Portland for distributing fentanyl. The foreign national I would be concerned about if I was a Portland senator, an Oregon senator, is a Mexican national leader of a drug trafficking ring. Another one, fentanyl, firearms, fatal overdoses, all in your state.
You have made your point.
57,700 fentanyl pills and stolen firearms in Oregon. That's what we should work together on, not gotcha questions during a budget
Let me
hearing on
recognize
public
Senator
safety.
Merkley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The Attorney General certainly has made the point that she's very concerned about issues that I'm concerned about as well regarding the security of this country. But let the record note that in terms of foreign influence and the sale of foreign influence through the president's coins, she absolutely refuses to respond and instead turns to a whole list of different topics. I think it's important for the leader of the Justice Department of the United States to be very concerned about foreign influence, and I encourage you to take on that topic and not consider it an offense that those of us who are concerned here, Democrats and Republicans, want Americans to make American decisions, not foreign influence being bought through crypto coins.
Senator Murkowski.
Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attorney General Bondi, welcome. Welcome to the committee. Good to see you. when we visited prior to your confirmation, we had, I think, a really good discussion about some of the statistics that, unfortunately, we have held the #1 place for far too long in areas that we really don't like, in terms of the increased number of deaths due to fentanyl between 22 and 23, an increase by over 40% when other states around the country were seeing that go down. We're doing a little bit better, not enough, because one death due to fentanyl is one death too many, as we would all agree. But also when it comes to violent crime, it's stunning for many people to hear a senator like me say that Alaska's violent crime rate was more than 540% of the national average in 2023. It's like stunning, just stunning, right? And so I think we had good conversation about that, what you could do in your position to help prioritize combating violent crime. I'm going to channel a little bit of Alaskans' conversations. We don't have much of an ICE presence in Alaska. We just haven't. We had 2 Russians seeking asylum a couple years ago when the war in Ukraine broke out. ICE didn't know what to do with them because we just didn't have a presence here. And all of a sudden, we're now on the map. We have those that are being detained in our local jail that were flown up to the state several weeks ago to be detained up there. So there's a lot of chatter about what is going on. And what I'm hearing, the fear that I am hearing, and I'd like you to just put to rest some of the concerns that Alaskans are having. They're worried that immigration enforcement is being prioritized over combating violent crime. And they're worried as they're seeing FBI and DEA coming in, assisting ICE in immigration enforcement. Again, many of the stories that we're hearing, it's not necessarily criminals that they are making the news. It's one individual who has been a restaurant owner down in Soldotna for the past 20 years, and his children are all integrated into the community. You've heard these stories many, many, many times. So I need to know, for Alaskans' sake, the response as to whether or not immigration enforcement is being prioritized over combating violent crime, and whether increased resources, whether it's staff or funding, are being sent to the state to help us cover the added workload. So that's my question. You've got a runway of about 2 minutes here to help me out.
Thank you, Senator. I learned more about Alaska from you in our meeting prior to my confirmation hearing than I ever knew, and we have talked about it.
And you're still invited to come up and see for yourself.
We have a trip planned, and we have some information for you on that trip, and that also we wanted to talk about the missing and murdered Indigenous people and the tribal resource response plans. Right. We wanted to visit some of those areas in a different setting. We can give you more details on that. Good. But we have 2 dates or 3 we'd like to run by you if that works, and 2 locations would like to go to. But yes, we've added 2 FBI agents in Alaska. We're adding more. Director Patel and I have talked about Alaska at great length. He met with you about Alaska as well, and what we can do. I'm going to try to talk fast. We have criminally charged 39 defendants over the last 4 months under Operation Take Back America, nationwide, though, to eliminate the cartels and transnational gangs. And the District of Alaska, we have charged 39, I don't know if you knew that, 39 criminal defendants just in Alaska under Take Back America, more throughout the country. But we're going to continue to fight. Your demographic is so unusual, and the hours of darkness and the temperatures and your lack of resources and your tribal population that we are working. I have also spoken to our new Gadi Saralta, who will be our new U.S. Marshal. about getting you additional resources in Alaska. I've spoken to Gaddy at length about that as well, and as soon as he is in place in office, we want to sit down and meet with you about that.
Well, I appreciate all that, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity for you to come to the state. So I am hearing you saying that you are committing more resources to this effort,
Yes.
which we're very thankful for, and as you have heard very clearly, we desperately needed, given the statistics as they relate to violent crime and of course, fentanyl. And so the specific ask is whether or not immigration enforcement is being prioritized over combating violent crime. And I just want to know that we're not taking the eye off the ball there.
And Senator, before you walked in, I think senators on both sides of the aisle shared that same concern, and it is not and it will not. A lot of it does go hand in hand, though, getting the illegal aliens who are violent criminals out of our country, but it will not. And I believe we've also seized 4.5, I think this is right, kilos of fentanyl since January in Alaska, but we will not forget about Alaska. We will prioritize Alaska and do everything we can to increase resources to help you and the citizens of your state.
Very good, and thank you. And I will be following up with a phone call regarding a NOFA for the delay in the release of some OVC tribal set-aside. So you've given us all encouragement to give you a call and know that we'll be
Please.
doing that with regards to Mountain Village.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
General Bondi, all of us on this subcommittee and actually the full appropriation committee learned more about Alaska.
We saw the big map, and it was truly amazing.
Thank you, Chairman Warren and Ranking Member Van Hollen. Thanks for holding this hearing. Welcome, General Bondi.
Thank you,
Good to
Senator.
see you. I want to raise with you something that's been deeply concerning to me, General Bondi. The 2024 Democrat nominee for Vice President actually called federal immigration agents Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo. This is dangerous for our agents, it's wrong, and it cuts against and it undercuts the rule of law. So I want to ask you a series of questions, General Bondi, and if you would accommodate me, I would appreciate it. First, you'll agree when a bill is passed by Congress and signed by the President, it's law, right?
Yes, Senator.
And until that law is changed by Congress, you have a duty to follow it, right? That's what the rule of law is.
Yes, Senator.
So let me read the law. We got it right here. On a warrant issued, in this case by the Secretary of Homeland Security, an alien may be arrested and detained pending a decision on whether the alien is to be removed from the United States. That's the law, isn't it? The law on the books passed by Congress that you have to follow, correct?
Yes, Senator.
Isn't it also the law that once an alien is ordered removed, quote, during the removal period, the Secretary of Homeland Security, again, shall detain the alien? Is that the law?
It's correct, Senator.
It doesn't say illegal aliens ordered removed should be allowed to roam the country freely, does it?
No, Senator.
I know it doesn't. Here's another law. When an alien is ordered removed, the Secretary of Homeland Security shall remove the alien from the United States. Is there any ambiguity in these words?
No, Senator.
So ICE agents enforcing those laws aren't the Gestapo. They're supporting the rule of law, aren't they?
Yes, Senator.
Is it a crime to obstruct federal agents?
Yes, Senator.
There are left-wing radicals all over the country physically attacking ICE agents. There are sanctuary cities that are interfering with law enforcement. How does the Department of Justice plan to hold those seeking to harm and obstruct federal agents? How do you hold them accountable?
Senator, I believe you've seen what we've been doing during the Los Angeles riots. We came in, if you spit on a law enforcement officer, no longer. We will charge you federally. If you loot a building, we will charge you with robbery under the Hobbs Act. All these people coming in, looting these businesses. They just called it looting and let them run out the door. No longer. You touch a law enforcement officer, we will identify you. We have great technology now. And those people are the ones who have really been wearing the mask and trying to cover their identities. We've been finding them. We have been charging them with assault on a federal officer, and there will be no offers and no negotiations.
Well, think about it. A federal facility, an ICE facility, was under siege in Los Angeles. I mean, certainly, you and the president weren't going to stand by, were you?
Absolutely not.
No, I appreciate that. I'm grateful to you and to President Trump for upholding the rule of law in this case. I want to finish by revisiting a conversation you and I had back during your nomination, because I very much appreciated that. And it has to do with my home state and city of Memphis, your commitment to come and see us in Memphis to deal with the fact that we've had rising crime. This is a problem across the country. But I'd like to ask your commitment again, General, to deploy law enforcement resources, particularly prosecutorial resources in Tennessee as they're needed.
I know you deeply care about Tennessee and the crime in Memphis and throughout your state, and you have called me numerous times to talk about that, and you care about our U.S. attorneys there, and I welcome talking to both sides of the aisle, working with you on any matters regarding law enforcement. But yes, you care deeply about the citizens of your state, as well as Senator Blackburn, and thank you both for caring so much and your input on our U.S. attorney there.
Thank you, General Bondi, and I'll look forward to seeing you in my home state sometime very soon.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Capito.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank the ranking member, and I thank General Bondi for being here today. And I want to pay you a compliment to begin, because you speak with such forceful clarity. It's very nice to hear exactly where you want to go, how you're going to get there, and how important it is to uphold the laws of this country. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Senator.
I wanted to point out the ATF's National Tracing Center, which is in West Virginia, is the only one of its kind to trace U.S. and foreign manufactured firearms. The facility provides critical information that helps solve crimes, detect trafficking, and track the movement of crime-related firearms. In 2024, that National Tracing Center processed more than 600,000 requests. I just want to make certain that in the budget, that there is enough in the budget to meet the demands, and that these critical services can be sustained with the budget requests that you've made.
Senator, our budget continues to fully fund the National Tracing Center. I will personally make sure that that is funded. It will continue to be operated by ATF as well, and it does such important work. Even in my years in a courtroom, they do amazing work. I've seen the work they do firsthand, and I would also, in all my spare time, I would love to visit that center.
That would be great.
I really want to visit that center and see what we can do also to enhance it and work with you on that. It's so important. You know, these are issues that cross party lines. I mean, this is what every American in our country, we should be working together on, and I'm glad Senator Van Hollen has stayed. I know others have other committee meetings, but he stayed here and listened to this. You know, this tracing work helps every American, Democrat and Republican, victims, all victims across every state alike, and it's such important work, and you have been a true advocate for it for your state, and thank you for that, Senator.
Thank you, and I look forward to having you visit. That would be a wonderful experience. Good to see it firsthand. I am a little bit concerned about the ATF proposed merger with DEA. I'm not going to ask a question on that so much, but we have received a lot of concern from constituents if that would dilute any of the different functions that each one of those does. Also, on the HIDTA task force, there's a proposal to move that over from ONDCP to DOJ. Well, Maryland, we share a HIDTA task force out of the Baltimore region into the Panhandle. We have one in southern West Virginia. This is critical for our area, the coordination of resources.
I got it.
How are you seeing that in terms of bringing it? I know it's been proposed in the past. What's your perspective on bringing HIDTA within the DOJ?
Yeah, it will go under Office of Justice Programs, OJP, but it will continue to help Americans. I don't think you were here when we spoke about it earlier, but it transfers $196 million to the HIDTA areas, and I will do everything in my power to be sure that those areas and those local law enforcement officers are funded. And I see why people are concerned to go back to the ATF-DEA merger. Change is hard. And what we want to do with ATF, Senator, we want to put them back on the streets. Instead of going to the homes of lawful gun owners in the middle of the night, we want them to be out arresting the bad guys for illegal firearms. We're doing away with the bureaucracy at the top. It's being streamlined, but ATF will go back to its core function. Those agents will be on the street going after the guns, the drugs, working hand in hand with DEA, and they will continue to do great work. And I frankly think they're excited to be out there doing cops work, what they signed up to do.
Right. Well, we'll see how that evolves, and I appreciate your response there. Hazleton is also in my district, which is a very large prison with over 3,000 inmates. They've had some issues out there, big issues out there, allegations of, with staff shortages, gross mismanagement, abuse, cover-up, falsifying documents. I'm sure you're tracking these issues. I do want to compliment the president on his appointment of William Marshall, a West Virginian, former state trooper from the state of West Virginia. He's going to do a fantastic job. So thank you for bringing in such a strong advocate. He's already been very responsive to us on Hazleton, which has had kind of chronic issues throughout the last several years, regardless of what administration it's been. So I want to put that on your radar screen. And lastly, I will say I've been a big supporter of the Violence Against Women Act. I'm proud of the work that we've championed here on the Appropriations Committee for this. It's really sad when you think of what happens in families sometimes. And the proliferation of violence is extremely concerning to me. I've worked in this area for a long time, so I just wanted to let you know my passion in this area. And again, thank you for being here, and thank you all.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for letting us steal Bill Marshall. I think all of you will think the world of him, our new Director of Bureau of Prisons.
Senator Capito, thank you. We do not intend to have a second round of questions, but in our usual fashion, I'm going to call on Senator Van Hollen for his concluding questions and wrap up, and then I'll do the same.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Attorney General Bondi, I have some budget-related questions to follow up on here. First, with respect to the proposal with the ATF. I've heard your testimony here. I heard it in the House, so I really don't want to get into a I'm not questioning you about the policy at this point in time. I think you hear there's bipartisan disagreement here. But I do want to understand your view with respect to the appropriations law, because current appropriations law does require congressional authorization to make this change, to make this merger. And so my question to you as the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the United States is, will you comply with the budget authorization law?
We will comply with the budget law. And Senator, I'm glad you brought this merger up, because if I was still a state prosecutor and hearing this, I would be concerned too about what's happening to ATF. ATF will keep its brand. DEA will keep its brand. But what they're doing, they're going under one umbrella, doing away with the bureaucracy at the top. These agents are going, they want to be out hunting down criminals. That's what they want to do. They work, so much of this work is the same work, going back and forth. And now they will be working collaboratively together to keep America safe. And we're going to put hundreds of agents back, thousands, back on the streets, and that's where they want to be. And I would have had the initial concerns that you have about that. But give us a chance, let it work, let the DEA and ATF work together, get those agents out there, do away with the bureaucracy, and hopefully we will make America safer as a result of it.
Well, I will say that wasn't just my reaction to the proposal. I was actually hearing from ATF agents as well. So again, we will obviously review that question in a bipartisan way on the committee, but I just wanted your assurance, and I appreciate it, that you'll comply with the appropriations law, which would require congressional action in order to go forward with that.
We don't need congressional action for this move, however.
Well, I thought I just got clarification. Well, it's going to be important to both the chairman and myself to understand your position as Attorney General on whether or not you can proceed with this merger without congressional action.
We are keeping ATF, we are keeping DEA. We are putting them under the same umbrella within the Department of Justice.
So I'm not arguing with you here. I want to understand your position. I think it will be important to members on both sides of the committee. The appropriations law currently would require that Congress approve of this merger. And so my question to you as Attorney General is, do you agree with that or disagree with that?
We will complete this reorganization, and I'm committed, I will look at that under the law. We will not violate the law, Senator, and we will work with Congress regarding that.
No, I appreciate that. So the second point I wanted to raise had to do with the prosecution of hate crimes, and I share your vigor in wanting to go after and prosecute hate crimes. I would just point out that the budget that you submitted zeroes out funding for 3 of the DOJ hate crimes programs, the hate crimes training program, Shepard Bird hate crimes, the Javara Hire No Hate Act, and the community approaches to advancing justice. So I hope you'll work with the committee if we seek to restore funding for those programs.
Yes, Senator, I just pulled up the details of those 3. Let me see. I'd be happy to discuss those with you further.
Good. And finally, I want to go back.
All 3 of those.
Thank you. I want to go back to the issues of grant determinations, because I think there continues to be some confusion between grants that had already been obligated that were withheld. And to my knowledge, there are about 400 of those still pending. It'd be helpful to get from your team if you have a different number. And then there's what we call notices for information, which relates to notices for future grant awards in this current fiscal year.
Yes, there is a difference.
And so I understood your earlier testimony to say, with respect to the notices, you do plan, the department plan to issue those very shortly. Is that right?
Yeah, and Senator, yes, you are correct on that. We notified the affected grantees and members of Congress regarding the terminations and how to appeal. That was the $811 million of grants that were initially terminated in 2025. We're also talking about upcoming ones as well.
Right. So I want to leave this hearing with some clarity on this issue. So when it comes to the notices of funding opportunities, because the clock is ticking on this fiscal year, do you and the Department of Justice intend to quickly notify people of those opportunities going forward?
Yes, Senator Van Hollen, as I said earlier, and it will be done on a rolling basis, but yes, within the coming weeks, we are absolutely doing that, yes.
And so finally, on
a rolling basis.
On the other category, which are the grants that had been previously obligated, I do have concerns, Madam Attorney General, with the idea that the way we're going to get them to stop being withheld is members of Congress calling. I appreciate the invitation, and I will look to see if we've been hearing from people. But this category of grants relates to people who already went through the process and already had those grants obligated, and they're currently being held. So my question to you is, can you tell us how many are still being held today? And I don't like the idea that in order for somebody to get their withheld grant unheld, that they have to call a member of Congress. That should be, so how many are left? Do you know? How many of these grants are?
I don't know exactly, Senator, but I know many of them are the subject of ongoing litigation, so I wouldn't be able to speak of that in detail in this forum anyway.
Well, maybe just a follow-up, because it would be helpful to try to narrow the scope of this. Again, my understanding, and this was the subject of the letter I referenced earlier from a number of senators.
And I have not read that letter, but I will be happy to read that letter.
If you and your team could get back to us right away on that, because these are grants that, as the chairman knows, have been previously obligated, some many years ago, but frozen. And so the question is, how can we get them unfrozen? And members of Congress will call, but not everybody, can just call up their member of Congress or thinks of calling their member of Congress. We need a process that's fair to everybody. I hope you'd agree.
And actually, citizens have called as well.
Well, exactly. And so, exactly. So, but again, this is an ongoing issue. And I know colleagues on both sides of the aisle are hearing from it, folks. So, Mr. Chairman, unless something else comes up, that's it. And look forward to continuing the conversation.
It's not my intention to ask any topics or questions that cause you to come back again, but if I do.
Thank you, Senator Moran.
You're welcome, General. First of all, I want to tell you how much I appreciate the service of Gaddy Seralto. While I'm not a Floridian, I do know him, and I know him because I visited the U.S. Marshals in Florida to learn what they do and what their jobs are, and he was a great host and very knowledgeable, and I look forward to his public service now nationwide.
Thank you.
You mentioned in your testimony about the Bureau of Prisons, and I'm pleased. It's kind of one thing that probably doesn't get the attention that it deserves among us and perhaps others. And Kansas is the home to a federal prison. Hiring and retention has been a significant, I assume, issue, lack of personnel. And I just would give you the opportunity to tell us how things are going. I think we're also, where the federal prison is located in Kansas, has a number of state prisons as well, and they compete for officers and employees. But nationwide, we need more staffing, it appears, at Bureau of Prisons, and I'd be interested in knowing how you think we will address that, and if you are.
I had a handwritten note here for you on the Leavenworth, Kansas, $50 million we are building with all exclamation marks in Kansas. Yeah, the BOP, I feel like, for lack of a better term, it's been a stepchild of the Department of Justice. That's probably not the right term, but I feel like they've been left out. And that was one thing as a career prosecutor that I care deeply about. And when Gaddy Seralto gets in here, that was one of the positions that we searched high and low for the best person for the job. Because as a prosecutor, I know you can't lock everyone up forever. You don't want to lock everyone up forever. But you want people to succeed when they go to prison. You want them to be able to succeed when they get out. Otherwise, you will have a revolving door. And that's what I feel our prison has been lacking. It's been a mess. BOP has been a mess. And that is one of the areas where we are greatly increasing funding. And the big, beautiful bill gives us a lot of money for increasing that. Not only that, but also for the First Step Act, for the halfway houses, to give people an opportunity after they've served their time to get out and be successful. And I believe there are many programs that should have been instituted in the federal prisons that have not been. Programs while you are an inmate. But we also have to have retention and bonuses and reasons for our prison guards to want to work in that environment. I think that's one of the toughest things that as Attorney General I have to tackle. But with Gaddy Seralto by my side, I know we're going to be able to do that. I pray we are every day.
General, one of the other areas that, and you may be very cognizant of this, that I think we sometimes overlook, and I certainly don't want to diminish the significant support that this subcommittee and people individually give to law enforcement, federal, state, local. We pay a lot of attention to the FBI, DEA, ATF, U.S. Marshals in this subcommittee, but I sometimes think we overlook U.S. attorneys, prosecutors. We can arrest people, but we need to make certain that we have a process by which the prosecution occurs and justice is ultimately attained. Anything you would like for us to know in this subcommittee as we pay attention to the total arena of not only arresting and law enforcement, but also the aspect of prosecution?
Senator, thank you for saying that. I've had the honor and privilege of working with, I believe, the brightest lawyers in the entire country in the Department of Justice. Not only our incredible U.S. attorneys, but in our civil division, throughout our criminal division, throughout every division in the department. But yes, the U.S. attorneys are second to none, and they are out there tirelessly fighting to keep people safe. I think what a lot of people don't realize is when we talk about FBI, DEA, DEA, ATF. All those cases from conception are being done hand in hand with the U.S. attorneys, even in the investigative stages. You only see them in the courtroom after the cases have been made, but that's of course not true. They are working tirelessly, and they are the best of the best, and our law enforcement officers are the bravest of the brave in this country.
I try never to admit my failures, but at a young age, I don't know, maybe 32 or something, I thought I should be the U.S. attorney for my home state, and I was terribly unqualified, I'm quite certain, but it was a very appealing job for the combination of public service, law enforcement, and protection of people. I think it's a very, we need to make certain that those individuals who prosecute in a U.S. attorney's office are recognized and honored.
Thank you.
And then, I helped create and pass legislation a number of years ago. I would highlight this again, and I think this grant program exists, but I'm not sure it's existing the way that I'd hoped. There are so many small local law enforcement offices. The city police department, the county sheriff's office, they don't have grant writers. And what I was trying to accomplish in a legislative effort and just getting the support of previous attorney generals was to create a grant program that eliminated much of the bureaucracy, paperwork, the efforts that are so time-consuming for a department that has a handful of officers, none of them grant writers, and if somebody's writing a grant, they're being taken off the street, off the township roads, and I want to make certain that you're aware of that effort and would be supportive of it and encourage it. Find ways to get those law enforcement agencies, small in nature, but who provide such tremendous support in our communities, to make sure that they have access to federal dollars, as do some of the larger departments.
Yes, I've learned more about grants in the last 6 months than I ever thought I would in my entire career. But yes, we've been working to improve accessibility by funding and simplifying the grant process. Reading these convoluted grants makes your head spin. And so we are working to streamline that and to help our rural and communities as well.
In general, you highlighted something that I would be remiss if I didn't perhaps correct what I say. I'm happy to have you reduce the bureaucracy and paperwork with any grant for any agency, whatever size, not just small and rural communities, but they have a particular problem that it's really hard for them to meet. And then, to follow up to, with Senator Van Hollen not here, I'll follow up with what he was saying. He was asking you about in following the law in regard to DEA, ATF, what was called a merger. What I heard you say is that you used the word merger and you used the word umbrella. And I think the difference is that the two agencies, at least if just to confirm I understand what you were saying, the two agencies continue to exist, but the oversight that occurs at the Department of Justice will be an umbrella over the two agencies. There's no actual official merger between the two. There's supervision. This umbrella is different to me. The word is different than a merger.
Yes, Senator.
Does that make sense?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. And then finally, as I shook your hand and said good morning to you this morning, you volunteered the importance of NIBIN, and I wanted to give you a chance to further extend those remarks during this hearing. ATF has a particularly strong presence in Wichita, Kansas. It includes a crime gun intelligence center at Wichita State University, a new correlation center that works in tandem with the one in Redstone Arsenal in Alabama, and opening next year is a new lab that will support revolutionary techniques to analyze DNA that comes from crime guns and casings. My question is that tell me what I want to give you a fuller opportunity to tell me about the importance of science and technology in the ATF and other law enforcement agencies being able to complete their jobs.
Thank you, Senator. NIBIN is a very crucial tool in our fight against gun violence and gun crime. In fact, I believe I've used them many times when I was a state prosecutor very early in my career and throughout my career. Analyzing the ballistics information is vitally important. We will continue to do everything we can. And I know it's very important to our sheriffs, to our state and local law enforcement officers, and we are going to do everything to be sure that NIBIN is fully funded. Let me assure all Americans we will do that.
Thank you. If you'd give me just one moment. Again, this is probably an issue maybe for the Department of Homeland Security more than the Department of Justice, but to highlight this for you as the nation's law enforcement officer, again, in those rural counties where we have a county or district attorney, and we have the human trafficking occur and arrests take place, the victims of human trafficking, then there's no interpreter, there's no place to house the victims. They begin to disappear within the community, and then there's no prosecution because there's no victim to provide the testimony to convict the potential perpetrator of that crime. I don't know whether you have anything you want to say about this, but I want this to be known that just as the federal government in its involvement in trying to help us deter and eliminate human trafficking, we struggle to have the resources necessary to meet the needs of those who are being trafficked.
Yes, we do, and I realize that is a very important aspect in your state as well. Interpreters are a huge thing. I witnessed that when I was a prosecutor in Florida, and we have to do everything we can to support our state and local law enforcement working hand in hand because, again, many of those communities are very rural. Let me clarify one thing. Can I please go back? I'm glad you're back, Senator Van Hollen. You do have to, of course, appropriate the funds for our reorganization. You called it a merger, I called it a reorganization. But of course, the funds would be appropriated by Congress. And we, of course, will work with you to follow the law, and we hope you support that. The funding for the ATF and the DEA to work under one umbrella. I think we were saying the same thing in a different way.
We'll have to compare notes and see whether we're on the same page, but thank you.
Let the record show that it was you that provoked Senator Van Hollen to return to the microphone. Senator Van Hollen, thank you for your cooperation today, and to our committee members who were here. It is a busy time in the United States Senate. Our appropriations process is hugely important. We want to complete all of our appropriation bills, including Commerce, Justice, and Science, and we want those appropriation bills to march their way across the Senate floor, be considered by the House, and signed by the President. It's hugely important to your department and to the country that we not once again end up in a situation in which we're incapable of doing that, and we have a continuing resolution that leaves things in limbo. If there are no further questions, senators may submit their additional questions for the subcommittee's official hearing record. We request your response within 30 days. So there may be written questions submitted to you, to the Department of Justice, and we'd appreciate and ask for your 30 days response. And with that, the subcommittee stands in recess to the call of the chair.